Hey everybody, how you going? My name is Flynn Tracy and I'm here with Jeremy Law. Jeremy, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good, thanks, man. How's everybody going this morning?
Great to see you guys in chat. We've got a couple of people in here already. What's up, Festus? Great to see you. We've got a special treat for you just at the very beginning. Joe, great to see you in there. Johanna, great to see you again. Hey Stanley, how you doing? So if you're watching this on YouTube, jump on over to behance.net/live. If you want to join the live chat, that's the live chat we'll be using today. You can ask questions, let us know where you're from, let us know what you're doing. It's been a week since we've done an Adobe Live, and last week was with Jeremy. And we tackled some pixel art, so something a little bit out of your normal wheelhouse, but something that's quite fun to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So definitely in terms of the workflow and how you approach your art, or how I approach my art at least, very, very different, but thematically still quite in line with this sort of like retro, a little bit cyberpunky game kind of stuff.
Mm.
So really super interesting to look at. And what's up on screen right now is what we ended up with last week. I've taken that a little bit further into a clean one, which I'll show you guys in a sec. And today we're going to throw some animation onto this and really make it come to life a little bit and get that kind of very, very simple 8-bit kind of gaming look that pixel art is really good for.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
before we
Let me get
do
some music
that,
going. Didn't do my music job.
ah, you're one of your 10,000 jobs. Um, as you like, I think you mentioned it in the intro. Festus a little while ago mentioned something around sort of doing something around Peppa Pig. I can't remember the context that it was in. I think we were doing like an ideation stream, and mentioned something around Peppa Pig, and I really liked that idea. And so I have gone ahead and finished that up. So basically,
Awesome.
what we've got is this kind of like samurai Peppa Pig. Um, that yeah,
That's amazing. And
there
this
you
is
go.
obviously like the Peppa Pig in front, like is obviously much more like for those that aren't familiar with your work is much more in in line with the sort of work that you would do.
Yeah,
These neons, like samurai, Japanese inspired, manga inspired sort of artwork.
totally, totally. And so it's just yeah, trying to get that kind of crossover in between old and new, and that's what I think kind of appealed to me with this idea of doing like Peppa Pig, which is like inherently this super, very very basic drawing, very basic character for kids, and the sort of like grow her up a little bit and throw her into a future kind of cyberpunk Japanese world, but all mixed with manga. It's all these kind of like sources that I like to throw in and say,
Mm.
yeah, here's the final one. I've done a little screen recording of all of this as well,
Oh, cool.
which I will throw up on my YouTube. So that'll be a cool little time lapse.
Nice.
And I probably will also be making prints or stickers of this. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, just wanted to share that as well. Just it's taken me a little bit of time. Been super busy lately, but finally got around to some me time and getting around to that really awesome suggestion by Festus.
Nice. Yeah, thanks, Festus. Festus is in chat as well. So there you go. Special treat just for
Awesome.
Festus. That's super cool. So yeah. I was going to say yeah. So saying hi from the UK. That's cool. We're both in Sydney here. It's 8:30 in the morning. So we're going to get started into some of the pixel art. And so yeah. So animating today. Animating in Photoshop. Like, is that the plan?
Animating in Photoshop. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's a couple of ways we can do that. We're just going to look at one. It's the most basic one. Again, we're going like really, really super basic and simple. And we're going to just do a quick little animation. Last week we ended up with this, and I mentioned kind of on the fly talking about line work quality and trying to avoid having double ups like this, for instance. So here you can see, sorry, I'm having a bit of a morning brain. What we want is for pixels to connect on the side, on the corners, not on the side. So this is technically kind of wrong, where you've got 1, 2, 3 pixels. Let me just switch to my pixel brush here. So we're going to go to pencil, and we've got a single pixel brush. And what you guys can see is that what we want to do is we want this, right? If you're going to do like something that goes up like this, like a diagonal, it's a nice 45-degree angle. What you don't want is for this to happen, where it actually goes up in steps.
Right.
Again, it depends on your line work. Like you can do that if you're going to go for a double pixel outline around the whole thing. But if you are trying to do a single pixel outline, you need to try and sort of keep it to something like this. It's just going to make your artwork a lot cleaner. So if I bring this up, so this is the artwork that we landed on last week, and I've gone ahead in the meantime and fixed it up. So you can see the difference here. I'm just going to scrap that layer. This is it all kind of, the line work has been cleaned up, the shading has been cleaned up, and it just it just has a little bit more structure to it, especially if we zoom out. Again, but the whole point of pixel art is that it's viewed from a distance. And so if I swap between those at a distance, it'll be small on your screen, but you'll see that it does make quite a difference in terms of how that's all thrown together. So we're going to take this, and I'm going to animate those little bubbles. So we're going to make it kind of bubbles coming out and like bursting at the top. We're going to animate this little 500, and then hopefully we'll have time. I've got a finished product at the end. I've got the kind of like, I prepared this earlier.
Right.
So we can come through the finished results if we don't have time to do the whole animation.
Smart.
But yeah, so we'll start with the bubbles, and then we'll take it from there. So what I'm going to do is I might just duplicate this just so we still got our original. So I'm going to duplicate this image, call it Ramen, and we'll call it frame by frame. So F by F.
While you're doing that, just a quick shout out that you'll see a little Q&A. So for those not familiar with our style of live streams here, we have a Q&A break in the middle. So feel free to ask questions in the chat over on Behance if you do have any as we're going along. But we'll also take like a 5-minute break to answer questions in the middle just to stretch our legs.
Yeah.
So that's what that is.
Okay, so we've got this all ready to go. I just need to do a little bit of layer cleaning up here on this one. We've got our original here, so if I mess around and screw any layers, then I can come back and get them from this one. So it's always a good idea to keep that there. So what we're going to look at is I'm going to keep that one on a separate layer. All of this stuff can get smashed down into one layer, I think.
So just merging everything down. Okay.
So yeah, I'm just merging everything down and making sure that we might not have time to do the highlights, so I'll just do that anyways. There we go, and then we've got this one. Yeah, I could probably merge that one down as well, and then we can get rid of all this stuff, and then I will.
You just deleted those bottom layers? What were those bottom layers that you deleted?
So the bottom layers were the original sketch that we looked at last week, which I don't really need anymore. So they're just a bunch of things that just, will kind of get in the way. Yeah. So we don't really need them. Again, because I technically I've deleted them from this, but this again is the idea of having this one as a duplicate over here, is that if I have gone like, oh, I messed up, I need to get that layer again, and I've deleted it, and I'm like 300 steps into the thing and I can't undo it, I can always just come back to this one and pull it over to the other one.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Yeah, you're going to save a original version, so you're not, if you go too far.
That's correct. Yeah.
Cool.
So we don't need these bubbles because the bubbles will be animated in a sec, so we will delete that. We've got this drip, which could actually, you know what, that drip can go in and sit on that layer as well. So again, a little bit of like up here, a little bit of reordering of my file, just in terms of like, here are the things that are going to move. I tried earlier to do this thing where this eyeball will kind of like bob up and down. But that was quite intensive surgery to this file. Right. We need to sort of get the thing that's in front and behind at the same time. It's that old conundrum in Photoshop. So I kind of scrapped that idea and went with a few others. But
That probably happens quite a bit with like, because you want it to be a really simple animation, right? So you kind of have to pick your battles. You can't kind of like, if you get to the point where you're animating so much, it's almost like, all right, we're getting to the point where frame by frame might not work, or maybe you want to bring it into After Effects or something like that.
That's exactly right. And I think the way that we're going to do it today, also, you'll see right now actually, is going to be a little bit on the limited side. So we're just going to make our file kind of animation ready before we go. I'm going to hide that, and that's what we're going to be working with. Right?
Cool.
If I want to be super clean, I could flatten that down onto my background, but we can do that later on, so we're not going to get too far ahead of ourselves. Main thing we want to do, as always with pixel art, is we are working with our pencil, not our brush. So over here, we want to be using the pixel, and obviously we just want it down to 1 pixel wide. On the eraser, because we're going to be using that too, you don't have that as a pop-up on the eraser. That lives up here in your mode. We want to go to pencil, and we want to bring it down to 1 pixel. Just for reference, again, we went through this last week. If you want to show your grid, you can go into View and go Show Grid, and the shortcut for that is Control or Command apostrophe, and that will show you where your pixels are going to live. When you're starting the artwork, that's handy. When you're at this stage in the artwork, you've got pixels to base yourself on as other references. You don't really need that anymore. But yeah, so we're actually animating at size because we need to be able to draw with the actual pixels, and I'm erasing in there in that way. Otherwise, we're going to get something a little bit weird if we're not animating that size. So we're working with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is Window Timeline. So I'm going to show the timeline down here. And you can see that there's a few things in here that we can do. First thing is we want to choose in between a video timeline and a frame animation. So if you're doing animation in Photoshop, if you're doing like traditional hand-drawn animation in Photoshop, you will have to go to this video timeline. So the main reason I'm not doing this here is because we're using pixel art, and the kind of the nature of pixel art being so low res and working from pixels doesn't cross over super well with that video timeline. So we're actually going to create a frame animation. And we just select that from the drop down, and then you just hit that button, and then you've got your first frame in your animation. And you'll notice that I've just got the one, and it just says 0 seconds, and then I've got a bunch of options down here. By default, I think your playthrough will just say once. We want to change that to forever, and then it'll just loop. We don't see that right now because we don't have an animation on there, but you'll see that in a sec. And then we can start to add some work into here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new frame. Okay, so frame 2 has automatically created a layer here in my panel. You can see that if I undo, I'm just going to click right here, create a new frame. It's sticking a new frame on there. Now, depending on how confident you are with animation, like the actual process of animation itself, you might approach this a little bit differently. I'm not an animator, and so I don't have necessarily the confidence of moving like 4 or 5 bubbles at the same time and keeping track of them. Because what we're going to be missing here is the idea of onion skins. So onion skins in animation is what happens when you, for instance, you're trying to make a ball like jump from over here and then kind of expand and then squash over there. That's 3 drawings. The onion skins, when you get to like this drawing, will show you lowered opacity versions of these ones. So it's just so that you can see the movement and how it's all kind of tracking there. We can't do that in the frame by frame. So we're going to have to do it a little bit more kind of finicky. So I'm going to do 1 bubble at a time, and then we'll take it from there. Yeah, nice. So we've got our frame.
Just a notion for the just a point for the chat is that yes, the Rosellas are here. It wouldn't be a live stream without the Rosellas turning up 15 minutes in to say hello. I might I'll turn it down just a little bit, but yeah, it's not part of the music.
Could be worse, right?
It's always better than like a leaf blower or lawnmower cranking up at like 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, the guys who cut like 5 football fields worth with a pair of toenail clippers and make the sound of a nuclear power base. All right, so we're going to basically just start here. So you can see in my timeline down here, I've got 2 things that look exactly the same, but it's created that frame. So I'm going to start drawing on this frame. And I'll pick a different color here, probably a color that doesn't make sense, but just so that we can kind of see how that process is going. And I'll start my first bubble. So first bubble is going to come out, obviously, out of the soup. There we go. And that's it. Then I make a new layer, a new frame, and that's made my new frame there. Okay. It's automatically selected as well. I'm going to leave it called frame 2 and 3 and so on, because that's what's referencing down here. So that'll be nice and clear. But what I'll have to do as I'm doing this is to kind of simulate onion skins, is leave frame 2 on, but draw on frame 3. So frame 2 is here, that's my starting point. And that bubble is now going to come up to like here, for instance. And we're going to limit this to a 12 frame animation, because it'll be quite simple and short and relatively easier to create that from our little animation. So we're going to just do this, and then I'm going to make a new frame. And you'll notice that all these frames are staying in the actual image, right? And that's going to be a problem. I'm doing that on purpose, so you can see kind of like what not to do. All right, so we've got 4 frames. I'll just do a 5th one again, just so we can kind of see how that's all going to play around. And I'll come out and fix this in a sec. Right, now we want to preview this, okay? So the next thing we're going to notice is my layer 1 is my ramen. That doesn't move. So I'm going to leave that here. When you go down into this little menu down there, you can see that it says 0 seconds. That's how much time it's going to play for. So if I hit play now, it's going to do this very, very quick little thing. And you can see that it kind of doesn't look great. So we're going to select frame 5, hold down shift, go to frame 2, and click on that. And we're going to say 0.2 seconds. And that's going to increase the time of play. We're going to leave this one at 0 because we don't want that one to play really in our timeline, because that one has nothing on it. This one is literally just the drawing without any of the bubbles. And now we can press play and see how that kind of starts to look, right? This is where also we did forever before. So if we do it once, it'll just play once and then finish, which is not great. You can do other if you want to, but forever is a better way of looking at it, because you can loop it.
Yeah.
So this isn't looking great, because in like frame 5, for instance, I've got every single state of my bubbles animation, when really I only want the last one. So we're going to start afresh, delete all of that. It doesn't delete the frames in here, so you need to be careful with that. And we need to delete them there as well. So now we're going to start again, make a new layer.
Just a quick question from Festus. Could you get the same effect if you made new layers instead of frames?
Yes. So there is another way of doing this, which can be a little bit tricky and maybe a little bit layer intensive depending on what you're doing, is if you actually create a file that has a whole bunch of different layers. I'll do that right now actually and show you guys how that works. I'll just duplicate this again, just so we're not messing around with our file. That's my code for delete it. Whenever I name a file, a whole bunch of vectors is code for deleting that file. So let's say that, for instance, I'm going to get rid of that one. Yep. And I'm going to get rid of that one. And I'm just going to make a bunch of new layers. All right. So layer 1 has that here. Layer 2 has that like here. I'm being real sloppy here. Here we go. Okay, so we've got 5 layers. What I can do now is I can tell it to where is it? I need to create frames from layers.
I keep switching our camera from like the left to the right to make sure that we can see the menu. So jump to left, right. It's all right. I'll just put the camera up the top. We're all set.
Geez, I haven't done this in a while. I might have to close this and reopen it again. Where has it gone to? Make frames from layers. There it is. It's staring me in the face this whole time. And so what that does, as you can see, is it has now, with all my layers, it's created a separate frame for each one. So because one of the issues with that is you can see, as I'll just make that 0.5 seconds, is because these guys are on separate layers. So it's counting the background as a layer. And you can see my thing moving there. And that's easier for me to animate, but then going back, I'll have to, really mess with some things here to get that looking good. And then I have to turn that layer on in every single frame. It's like, you do save some time doing it this way in terms of animation. Like if you're not super confident with your animation skills, you can do it this way, create frames and then create layers and then create your frames. It's a little bit more kind of labor intensive on the flip side, simply because you have to do it this way. But you can, absolutely. That's a good question. You can just make new frames from layers automatically.
Cool.
So we are here and we are creating a new layer, a new frame, sorry, and then we're going to start again. So we're going to start, the top of that bubble goes there. And so you can see now in my frames down here, I don't need to highlight that layer on because it's already on in every single frame. So it's just going to stay that way for me. So now I can start to properly animate this. Go down into there. And then I need to turn this off, right? So when I'm on frame 3, I need to turn frame 2 off. And then I'm going to make a new frame. Frame 3 will stay on, and I'm drawing on frame 4. This is like, you need to be a little bit careful of what layer you're drawing on, what frame you're showing, and so on and so forth. There's a little bit of just like, make sure that the process is in that order of like, make a new frame, leave layer on, draw your thing, turn layer off, make new frame, and then rinse and repeat again and again. Right. Because it can very quickly start to go a little bit bonkers on you, and like you don't know where your animation went wrong. So these are going to start out a little bit slow. And again, it's just one of those like processes of animation that just like a little bit of animation idea of like the bubble will start out a little bit slowly and then speed up as it goes to the top and then eventually bursts. Right. So on frame 5, we've got layer 4 showing. So that's layer 4 is just for reference as to where that bubble was. And then we're going to speed this up a little bit.
There was another question that I think I missed earlier on. Do you always use Photoshop to animate pixel art?
There are other programs that are dedicated to this, but whenever I'm creating pixel art, I'm usually in Photoshop 9 times out of 10, so I will just do it this way. Again, this is not necessarily something that I do super often, but it is, like, Photoshop is completely capable of rendering something like this. So yeah, essentially, there we go. You can start to see that happening. Because I've got it on 0 seconds, it's going real fast. So we're going to leave that on 2. And now it starts to do that. So you can see it's a little bit kind of jaggedy. Like the movement's not super fluid, but it doesn't really matter. Again, we're going for that lo-fi kind of pixel art vibe. So that's perfectly fine. And that's kind of actually what I want. So new frame. Now, because I've specified 0.2 seconds, every new frame will stick with that measurement as well. So here we go. And now this one's gonna get a bit smaller. Oops.
Tunk was saying, I always try and then I switch to Premiere or After Effects.
Yeah, so like again, like if you're gonna do this as a pro, like when you get Ben on, he's not doing it this way. He always does After Effects or anything like that. Those are like proper dedicated motion software. So yeah, totally. But again, the idea here is like if you're not super confident with those programs, that can be a little bit of a handful to learn.
Yeah.
Then like Photoshop is still your mate here and will still help you out.
Good old buddy Photoshop. Always there for you.
Cool. So now we've done our entire process of that bubble kind of rising and bursting. And so we're going to just preview that. There we go.
Nice.
So like that's basically it, right? So now I can kind of start afresh. I'm going to need 2 more frames in here just to make it a nice clean 12 frame. It's just, again, 12 frame is just because it's a little bit more kind of feng shui and just easily dividable and long enough that you can do some work, but not so long that it's going to be really heavy and just take too long to roll through the whole thing. So that's one of my bubbles. Now the process is kind of going to be the same for the rest, but obviously because I don't want all the bubbles to rise and explode at the same time, I'm going to have to stagger it. So where I've started, for instance, I've obviously started this one on my first frame here, so frame 2, and then gone all the way to frame 10 to the top. I'm going to maybe start one that goes from frame 6, and I'm going to start it in a different position. Right? So I can start this one down here, for instance, and then we're going to go, and he can be a little bit smaller, so we're going to do, I don't know why it's a guy, but yeah, there you go. Frame 6 and then frame 7. So this is where, again, where we're like, you'll notice that now because I've already created my frames and I'm switching between them, I'm still actually on frame 6. It hasn't automatically gone to frame 7. So this is where you need to be extra careful when you go back and add stuff to the frames you've already created. You need to be aware of where you're at and what you're doing. And because I need my onion skin, I'm going to turn frame 6 on, and then I can animate that into here.
So that's like a manual onion skin by turning that layer on.
Exactly. So I turn it on, and then I need to make sure again to turn it off when I'm finished with it. All right, and then I switch to frame 8, go to that one, turn layers frame 7 on, but make sure I'm working on frame 8, and so on and so forth. So again, like it looks like it's not going to really show super well, but because it'll be moving, your eye will track it quite easily. So yeah, so this is basically me now for a little while.
Just might kind ask you questions while we're going then.
Yeah.
All right, I got a Jesse question. Jezro in the chat. Yep. Good to see you there, buddy. Off topic, Jeremy, if you were stuck on an island, what's the one console you would take with you?
He can't ask me that. He knows what he's doing. Sly dog. I'd probably take, you know what? Actually, I'd probably take a handheld something. Maybe old like retro Game Boy. There we go. That's diplomatic.
That's diplomatic. Nice. Well done. PC for me. Does PC count as a console or no?
Nah, I don't think so. PC is not really a console, is it?
What do you think, chat? Let me know.
I don't think that counts.
I would want to take my PC for sure. I don't play any other console. I mean, I got a Switch somewhere. I don't really use it. I'm surprised how much I didn't use it actually.
Switch is a good one to take because it's easy.
feels like they're putting everything on Switch now. Like the question immediately is like, it's like, oh cool, did you see the new Halo's coming out or something? And it's like, cool, is it coming to Switch? It's like, seems to be the first question that is always asked, that everyone always talks about. Maybe. That's cool. What about you guys, chat? What would you take? What console would you take to a desert island? A Surface? Yeah, it's bullshit, isn't it? That's funny.
I guess you'd have to say like Animal Crossing. Hey, like just like any kind of deserted island.
Can you imagine?
Kind of game.
Like, I really got to escape from this desert island by cultivating my own digital desert island. Shovel to make sandcastles, Tunk. That's pretty cool. You might find treasure.
But you can see just quickly what I've done here, because I've started on frame 6. You can see how now I'm back to frame 2 and it's the end of my cycle. So if I animate this, you'll see that bubble comes up, and then like the end of it is on frame 2. Right. Just so that again we've got that kind of staggered bubble rising. It's not like they're not all going at the same time, which would create that loop that doesn't seem very natural. Like we want these bubbles to look like they're just kind of going on and on and on. And it's one of those like a walk cycle, if you will. Like the first drawing, the last drawing needs to be the drawing that comes before the first drawing, so that animation just keeps going and going and going and looks like it just continues on forever.
Yeah.
So we can just kind of start different stages of bubbles going as we're kind of doing this.
Cool. And we've got like 6 minutes till our like official chat. So we'll throw in your questions if you do have more questions. Otherwise, I'm going to keep chatting about consoles. Dreamcast for the win, Deborah. Retro all the way. That's amazing. PC. I've got another PC buddy in chat. Rukan, that's great.
Did we decide whether PC was a console?
No, but it seems that someone else would like to bring their PC. Imagine if you got that, but there was no internet, so you just can't play any of those. Like, has to be.
That would be hard, hey, because like every one of your games these days is online. Hey,
syncs to some server somewhere.
That holds true for console too, though.
That's true. Johanna's Switch. Stanley's Neo Geo Pocket Color.
Ooh.
Oh, Festus might be winning here. It's probably a better idea. Very practical solution, Festus. A Kindle with 9 million books. Yeah, that's true. That would keep you going.
Let's squash this one a little bit, actually. He's going to get a little bit squashed just before, oops. And all right, so here I've screwed up, right? I've done my drawing on frame 12. So frame 12 now has 2 bubbles on it, where normally I should have been on frame 2. So I need to get rid of that and make sure I'm on frame 2. So this can happen, obviously, like you just, human error. But if you don't catch it as you've just done it, it can start to play tricks on you a little bit. So there is, like I said, like it can be a little bit kind of tricky to navigate this if you're not paying attention, if you're getting morning brain, but yeah.
Or if we're asking you questions as we're going. How come you did a flatter, like chunky kind of bubble?
So that one's going to squash a little bit. So you'll see that it just kind of like, it's kind of like wobbling a little bit in midair.
Right.
Yeah. It, like, again, this is one of those things with animation, like, and with pixel art too, I think, where when you do it, it's like, what is that? Why does that exist in the shape that it exists? But when you play it, hopefully, please don't make me be wrong, you'll see that, like, see how that just happens there. It just looks a little bit kind of like it's just kind of squash and then it explodes.
Yeah.
It looks perfectly natural when you do it that way. So it's just one of those little kind of tips and tricks. What I might do now is I might switch gears and I might do a little bit of a drip coming down from that bowl down into this kind of little puddle that I've pre-prepared down here. And so we're going to go on to frame 4. There we go. And then we're going to animate onto here. So I'm going to grab that color and we're going to start going ahead. So this is going to expand down and then it's going to retract. So here we go, 1, 2, here. Like that. Yep, good. Yes, okay, good. Just making sure I haven't messed up. Good. And then that is gonna splash up some little things. There we go. Okay, let's see how this plays out. Okay.
Nice, that looks cool. Oh, the drip's pretty cool, man. I like the single pixel. I like the single pixel splash. There's something like really charming about it, right? Like I wonder if it is nostalgia. Like, did anyone not grow up on like pixel art games that also loves this? Like any young folks in the chat? Because I wonder if it's the nostalgia thing for us, right? Like think about like Game Boys and Super Nintendos and all that sort of stuff. I wonder if it's that, or I wonder if it transcends generations. We could ask Johanna. Johanna's very young.
Yeah, I think it's but also this like surprising thing. I'll just stick that on the desktop real quick. It's that surprising thing. I think when you look at like if you take like OG Street Fighter on Super Nintendo, and you look at what they call sprite sheets. So sprite sheets are each of the frames of the animation that they had created for, like, I don't know, like let's say it's like Ryu doing one of his like Hadoukens. And it's actually like you look at that and your eye perceives it as being quite fluid when there's actually only like 7 or 8 frames to that animation, and there's only a few little states, and you look and it's just like when it's in the animation, like when he's kind of standing there just like breathing, it's like literally just 3 drawings of like normal, up, down, that's it. And then you loop that a bunch of times and it creates this really kind of like seamless thing that is really interesting to watch. So there is definitely a sense of kind of like nostalgia behind something like that. That we really kind of attach to. I've just switched it to 0.1 seconds actually, just because it's just a little bit more fluid. It feels a little bit less kind of staggered. And you can see that has made a little bit of a difference to the overall sense of movement. Like that drip it's a little bit too kind of bit too staggered. The bubbles aren't, you need a little bit more speed for your eye to kind of gloss over the imperfections of the motion. So something like this is a little bit fluid. Again, it depends on what you're kind of going for, really. Like if maybe you are going for that totally like really staccato, like very very lo-fi animation, because that's what pixel art is going for. Maybe you're going for something a little bit cleaner. It really just kind of depends on what it is that you're trying to do.
Yeah, cool. Hey, just a technical question. Why don't you select the first frame there when you're speeding things up?
Because the first frame has nothing on it.
Right.
So because I need this ramen bowl and the background to be in every single frame. So when we did, when Festus was asking, can you make frames from layers? Because this is on a layer, because I might sort of do stuff to it, I have done it this way so that this is in every single frame. So that one is this frame here, as you can see, has got no bubbles, no nothing on it. So that one plays for 0, because if I played that one for like 1, as with everything else, you just see a very brief flash of the layer where nothing happens. See that? You can see there's a quick little moment there where just, why is everything stopped? So I'm just leaving that one on 0, just so that it changes to make it.
It's funny that 0 wasn't an option.
Yeah, it's just one of those default things that you can do. So now it just kind of loops back in. When frame 12 finishes, it jumps straight to frame 2 and skips over that one. But I need frame 1 to exist so that I can have the ramen bowl in the whole thing.
Cool. Hey, we're at Q&A.
That's it.
We'll do some Q&A real quick.
Yep.
We'll jump in. I know we've got a lot to cover. And wait, where are we? Easy question first. Which Nintendo character do you want to be?
Oh, that is not an easy question at all.
It was easy for me to ask.
You know what? I'd have to go. It would have to either be Mega Man or it would have to be Yoshi.
Man, I was going to go Yoshi. Well done. Let us know, chat. Yeah. What do you think? I think Yoshi's pretty amazing. Mega Man, yeah, I wasn't even thinking about Mega Man. Good stuff. Jess is asking, Jeremy, long-time fan, first-time caller, what do they call a cheeseburger in France?
A cheeseburger, but that wasn't the line, was it?
It's a Royale with cheese.
Referring? Yeah, Royale with cheese. It's a quarter pounder because they don't have the metric system.
Another question, more around kind of the artwork. Like, what would you say to people? What advice would you give to artists or designers who are trying to do something a little bit different than what they're used to?
My advice would be just do it.
Just do it. Nike.
Like if that's the question, if the question is like how do you go about doing it, then the internet is your best friend. Like finding out how to animate or finding out how to do like this kind of frame by frame stuff or how to use Premiere or whatever, like all those kind of things. The internet is always your best friend for that. If the question is more in terms of like, can I do that? As in like, is that going to throw my audience off? If I do that, like, are people going to find that strange if I'm doing that? Or, hang on, what's happened here? Interesting. Okay, cool. I'd say just do it. Like I've spent a lot of time, probably way too much time worrying about like, when I'm doing manga art and then all of a sudden I post something about pixel art and it's like, hey, that's weird. And yeah, it might throw some people off, but it just like, whatever, just if that's what you want to do, then just do it and don't worry too much about all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's also like this idea of that thing of like working for your audience, and like it's really awesome to have those people there like backing you and dropping comments on your work and supporting you in that way, but at the same time, like you don't work for them, you work for you. So it's important to kind of not get trapped into that thing of like, well, I can't do that because nobody's seen me do this. And so it's like, well, that can lead to some very tricky situations. So yeah, I think my advice would just be just learn how to do it and then do it.
Cool. I like that a lot. And maybe one more question as we go back. Can you change the order of frames? So I guess, could you, if you wanted to, change the order
you can
of frames?
Reverse the order of frames, as in you can like switch around all the frames in that sequence. I forget how you do this. I've never done it myself, but I think there's a thing in here. Yeah, you go reverse frames, and that'll switch them around if you want something to play backwards. Sometimes it's helpful for walk cycles, or if you've got like a pendulum that swings one way and basically all the same frames are played in reverse to go the other way. you can just duplicate those frames and then reverse them. So you only have to do half the work because essentially it's the same kind of frames going backwards. So you could also drag one of these frames to reorder manually. But again, that could potentially kind of mess with the whole flow of your animation. So yeah, I think this is the way that I'm doing it here is incredibly like lo-fi and manual, and everything is within my control, which is probably a good thing in some ways, because it means that nothing will happen that I don't want to have happen. But it does also for sure mean that like my workload is significantly increased.
Right. Cool. Do you want another question, or do we want to jump back in?
Yeah, no, let's go.
One more question. All right. Stanley says, "Hi Jeremy, thanks for the tutorial. What do you do to stay creatively sharp / inspired?"
That's a tough one. I think that the myth of the artist who's like inspired always every day and all constantly creating is like I said, is a myth. That doesn't happen. Like lately, I think I've been going through a little bit of a rut, mostly because some of my friends are playing WoW, and I just got stuck into WoW, and so that's just taken up all my time.
They drag you back in, don't they?
Yeah. I actually got out, and then one of my other friends started a new character and was like, "Oh, we'll do this," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, fine, I'll jump in." But yeah, it's just like I'd escaped the Matrix, and now the Matrix has me. And so it's been a while. Like that Peppa Pig that I just showed, that has been in the works for quite some time. Because I guess to be blunt, I couldn't be bothered. I was doing other non-artwork productive things, which from a career standpoint is probably not the best move. But again, I think just like you can't assume that you will be creative all the time, always.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just not feeling it, and if you're not feeling it and you try and force it, sometimes it'll go, but more often than not, you'll just produce stuff that you're not happy with, and it's just kind of wasted time. So it's good to take a break sometimes and give yourself that break. But when I am kind of feeling a little bit more motivated, I just movies will inspire, a song will inspire sometimes. Usually it's things like movies or video games. I'll do a piece of fan art. It's usually stuff that I'd like to do. So the stuff that inspires me is I'll do a thing that will potentially or could potentially be a job. So for instance, at the moment I've also been playing, which is another brag on my time, I've been playing a Japanese samurai game called Ghost of Tsushima, which fits visually, and I've just been taking a million screenshots as I've been doing it. Just simply
it's a beautiful
looking
game.
It's an amazing game, really super well rendered, and because it's smack bang in the world that I create, and there's a heap of reference in there that I can kind of get as to okay, so that's what that looks like, and that's what this is for, and all these guides who have done all this research have access to all this information that potentially doesn't really exist on Google. Is a gold mine for me to kind of plunder and get ideas from.
Yeah.
And see how I can kind of develop that in my own way.
So when Cyberpunk comes out, you're in so much trouble, right?
Well, yes and no, because if it's anything like The Witcher 3, which is by the same developer, then it's going to be a long game, and it will definitely be a massive time sink. But at the same time, excuse me, it's probably going to give me a heap of ideas and a bunch of kind of references, and even just like I said, just fan art to pump out. So you know, it can definitely boost your production if you kind of let it, I suppose.
Yeah, true.
All right, so we'll do one last bubble. And we'll move on to Stranger Things.
Stranger Things, cool. So just letting you and chat know we've got about 35 minutes left, 34 minutes left as we're going along. So feel free to ask questions. Just another shout out if you're watching on YouTube or anywhere else, just jump over to behance.net/live if you want to join the live chat. If you've got any questions for Jeremy while we have him, 35 minutes, 34 minutes, not a long time. So if you do have questions, now is the time. Hope you guys are doing all right. Hope you're enjoying this. Something very calming about these pixel art animating bubbles.
So, all right, so you can see here I've messed up somewhere. And now trying to find where the missing frame has gone is really tricky. So you see frame 5 here has these 2 bubbles on it. And then frame 6 has that one without the other one.
Right.
And then frame 7. So like if you look right here, you'll see it kind of like jitters a little bit. That's going to be really tricky for me to fix in that sense. So yeah, I might move on to something else at this stage.
Yeah. If it's going to take you a while to like kind of troubleshoot,
find the bug, it will do.
We can always move on.
Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll animate my little plus 500 here. And so there's a couple of things with this that need to be addressed first, is because this is on a separate layer, and because in the original artwork, so original artwork means the Ramen layer and the background layer here, they're the ones that are in every single frame. Everything else is only showing the artwork that is on that current frame. So you can see when I'm playing, it's kind of cycling through each one of those frames. If I stop on here, it's only frame 7, frame 8, and everything else is hidden, right? So if I go to my frame 2 and show that plus 500 and then press play, in every other frame it's going to disappear, and then it like flashes in frame 2 and then it goes away again.
Yeah, it's like the game's glitching.
Yeah, a little bit. So I need to do this then in the way that's going to work for me. So I'm going to start out with this. It's going to rise up and it's going to fade in and fade out. So one of the weird things with this, which I'm not sure if it's intentional, I'm not sure why this exists in the way that it does, but it's easy to kind of work around, so it's not a huge deal. If I go in like frame 2, for instance, frame 3, and then frame 4, and then frame 5, and each time I'm just showing that layer, now it's on all 5 of these frames, so it stays in a little bit longer and so on. So I can do that. If on frame 5, I drop the opacity of that down to like 50, you'll see it only does it to frame 5. So changing the opacity only applies in that one frame. Changing the position also only applies in that one frame. So if I do this, it will, why has it done that? Maybe. Okay. Again, just this is all a little bit of troubleshooting times. All right, frame 1 is, there we go. So we're going to drop that down to 10, to like 20% maybe. We'll go by 20s, or by 30s actually might be better. So we'll go to 33%, and then we'll go to this one, and then show that, and drop it down to get it to 66%, and then go to this one, and then go to basically 100%. See what happens. Cool. All right, so that's good.
So it's like fading in.
So it's fading in, yeah. And now I want to get this one to rise up as it goes. So up we go. Yeah, cool. So if you do it, if you do it with the transform tool, it'll do it on every single layer. If you do it with the move tool, it will only do it on the frame that you are currently working on.
Right.
So it's one of those little weird kind of quirks that you need to kind of be aware of, and how that kind of plays in through that. So it's a little bit, can be a little bit kind of tricky to play with, but yeah.
Nice.
Again, not the end of the world to get that right, but definitely can play tricks on you if you're kind of not too sure of how that all kind of pulls together. So we got that one, that's at 60. Then we need to do this one. And here I can't use onion skin, so I need to kind of eyeball it a little bit and see how that looks. Drop that down to 33. I've just gone with 30s because it's dividing 100 by 3, and then I can play over 3 frames. And then that'll go out.
Does that work well because you've got the 12 frames and 3 goes into 12, or?
Kind of. It probably doesn't really make a huge difference, but it's just because it's more, like I said, it's just a little bit more feng shui. There we go. Bang.
Nice.
So it goes fast and then it slows down a little bit and fades in and out. So it's just like this little ramen is giving you plus 500 health every time you consume it.
500 hit points is always good.
500 hit points, yeah. Cool. So the other thing as well is, like, if I want to change the color of this, so I might do something with this highlight here. So let me save this and switch to another layer, and I'll do my highlights a little bit differently. So I'm going to need to, again, because I've smashed all that together, that highlight is now on my ramen. I don't want that to be the case. So I need to take all of this. What's this one? That's that. Yeah, cool. I don't need that. Duplicate, smash together, copy, and then paste in place. So now we've got that one without the highlights. And again, a little bit tricky because I've put it on the, I've pasted it onto that layer 8. I need to paste it onto layer 1. And then it will appear everywhere in my drawing, hopefully.
You used dictation.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that was about. Okay, so it hasn't showed in every single one of my layers. So if that's the case, rather than selecting each layer one by one, you can just select all your layers and hit the show button, and it will do that in there for you. So you can see that layer 6 here hasn't done it. So I'm going to bring these guys together. You can see now that it's in none of my layers. If I hold down Shift, select all of my frames, and then show that, it's going to show in every single frame very quickly. So that's now my same thing, just without the highlight, because I'm going to bring now that highlight in on a separate layer. There we go. I can delete you. Grab that. Command C. Command Shift V to paste in place.
So that pastes it exactly in place where it was on the other layer that you copied it from? Yeah.
That's right. So I don't need to kind of shift it around a little bit. But because I had that behind my original outline, some funky stuff has happened. And I need to just clean that up real quick. There we go. All cleaned up. Oh. and probably need to do, I'll just get rid of these guys. All right, so I'm just going to do this one. It's just going to be this kind of like glowy effect, and it's just going to kind of pulse in and out. So we're going to bring this one into here, and he's going to be at 100%. And then we're going to do that one here, and he is going to be down to 30. So we're just doing the same thing here that we did before. So down to 66. And then because this one's not moving, this one's a lot easier. So down to 33 or 36, whatever. It doesn't have to be exact. And we don't want him to completely disappear, so we'll go down to 15, and then he can start to reappear again. And yeah, that's it.
Nice.
Cool. So now if I play this, you'll see that it just kind of like there's a neon sign there, and it's just kind of glowing a little bit.
There's a lot going on in just like the 12 frames, right? Like between the bubbles coming at different rates, the 500 plus coming up, and then the glow. There's a lot.
Yeah. So this is what I was talking about at the start, right? Where I've done all the bubbles. Like every time I make a new element, I start my timeline again. If I was to keep track, because I don't have access to onion skins, if I was meant to keep track of where the 500 was, what the opacity was, where that bubble is, what that thing is doing, this one, that one, where the drip is, where the highlights is, like it's just too much for my morning brain to compute, even my any time of the day brain to compute, to be honest.
Sure.
But so it's easier just to do it as a one by one thing of like do one thing and then do the next and then do the next, and then like that can just keep on going and going. So we've got about half an hour left, maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah, about 20 minutes would be close.
Yep. Okay. Could add in some more bubbles. I could do a few more things. What I might do is I might just talk a little bit about the size of this as well. So the fact that this is currently at this scale, and again at that scale, it's working just fine. We got all those kind of bubbles happening. It's all kind of looking pretty good. But obviously that's not very kind of user friendly to work with. So we can kind of export this as a GIF, but we need it to be a little bit bigger than this. So this is where when we're finished, we can save this, and then we can go in and increase the size of our image here. So Command Option I. We touched upon this last time, where normally by default we're on this setting here. So what we need to do basically is we need to rescale this without it being all horrible. So if I do this now, you'll see, because it's on the default setting, which is automatic, right? If I increase this from like 10 mils, I want that to be, let's say, 200 mils. Right? You'll see that this is going to happen. It's going to make it really like not very pretty to look at, and we'll lose that kind of pixelated thing, because what it's doing is it's trying to take all that pixel information, and Photoshop is like, I don't like hard edges, because when you do that, it tries to kind of like blend that down, which is the nature of Photoshop. Again, it's like one of those like the physics of Photoshop going into when you create a circle in Photoshop, like you're creating a circle from squares, and so Photoshop has to do some work for you to do basically this. And again, we covered this last week, but it's probably a good idea at this stage to make sure we talk about this again. If I make a circle here from a distance, like on an A3, that looks like perfectly fine. It looks all good. But if I zoom in, you'll see that what it's actually done is it's made this kind of soft edge, and there's like 3 or 4 pixels in the middle here, which are not the color green that I had selected. So that's kind of fading out to that. And that's Photoshop trying to smooth down that edge. So we want to prevent it from doing that. And how you do that is you change that setting to nearest neighbor, hard edges. And so when we do that, and then we go to 200 mils, you can see in our preview that it's actually keeping all those pixels perfectly fine. And we've got a nice...
I'm surprised you don't need to like mathematically double it or keep it within the same, like I would have thought that say it was 400 by 400 pixels that you don't need to have it to be 800 or 1200 or something, but it didn't seem to matter there.
It doesn't really, because again, what Photoshop has done is like, it's when you're doing square shapes like this, it doesn't do that nearly as much, or it doesn't do it at all really. Like same thing if I go back into my example here with my circle, it's doing that. But if I go into a rectangle or like a nice four-sided shape, you won't see those different color pixels on the edge because we're making a square out of squares. So Photoshop doesn't need to do any work to translate that image. What you will see sometimes when you do this, and this may very well be down to what you were talking about, is sometimes there's a little bit of a tiny shift of the pixels, but it shouldn't be too much if we do it. Also, the preview looks like it's a little bit blurry compared to what we were doing before. I think that's just a rendering thing. The file itself is the exact way that we've left it. So now this is at a scale that we can work with. And basically all we need to do now is export this to a GIF, and then we're basically kind of done with it. So we're just going to go into our file, export, and we're going to save for web.
It's like Command, and then, Option, Shift, S, I think. I used to use this all the time.
Yeah. And you can see it gives you a little preview of what that looks like. This is your standard like saving for web images that we always do whenever you upload anything to Behance or your website or whatever. It should go through here. Because
so
as you can see,
do you often have the 2-up version there?
I always go with 2-up, yeah.
Interesting. Is that just to make sure that it matches?
It's just to make sure that, for instance, if I've got an image that's like this one, for instance, 16 megabytes, obviously it's a PSD file. So it's going to be a little bit heavier, but if I am working from a JPEG that's like an A1 or an A0, if I save that at a smaller size, it'll start to crunch some pixel information down. So you're not going to see it here at all because it's all like perfect pixels. But if I was to do, let's say that I do this one, right? So this one is, I think, an A3. So that's not too much, but let's just, for the sake of an example, let's just save that for web. If I go into my JPEG settings, you can see down here that what it does is it's showing me the original, right? So that's 2-up, original, and then optimized. That's gone from 66 to 2.7. 2.7 is still probably a little bit too big for web purposes. So let me zoom out of this and kind of find somewhere a little bit better to hone in on, somewhere with a little bit more detail. In my JPEG settings here, if I drop the quality down, you'll see the size will drop down, but you'll also see how that's kind of, I don't know if you guys can see that too much on your screens. You can see that there's a huge loss of quality down there. So that just 2-up just shows me that. Now, obviously, I would never do that. I'm exaggerating quite significantly to kind of show you guys how that works. But just that's the reason I've got 2-up there, is just so that I can see. Like, I usually try and not have my images go over 1 megabyte to upload. And so with things like this, it gets a little bit kind of tricky. I would probably also not leave it at A3. I'd switch it to pixels and make that at most 1500 pix.
Right.
Make sure we're on automatic as well for web, simply because it's just, otherwise it's going to be a little bit too heavy, and then it will lose, to get it down to size, you're going to have to get it to lose too much quality.
Right.
So now it's at that size, and we're getting a 300 kilobyte image without losing too much info. So now we've gone up to 1 meg and it's almost exactly the same as the other one. So yeah, so that's how I would normally kind of do something like this. But back to our little ramen dude here. So we've got that image size is 2000 pixels. That's pretty huge, but whatever. We'll just leave it at that for now. And then we're going to go in and export this as, come on, do it. Save for web, save for web.
Should upload this to Giphy.
I could do. Save for web legacy, there we go. And what we want is obviously instead of having it as a JPEG, it's going to save as a GIF by default. Yeah. Because it's an animation, so we want that to be the case. If I save it as a JPEG, it's just going to save it as a flat. So we down here, obviously we want GIF. You can leave all these things as they are. 128 dithered. Dithering, just very quickly, I think we mentioned this last time. I should talk a little bit about dithering, and I will in a sec. Dithering does it simulates a gradient with pixel art, and I'll show you guys how that works and what that means. But we're just going to leave it at that. We're going to say looping animation. Again, we can say once or we can say forever. We want it to loop forever. And then I can say save please, and it will go onto my desktop as a GIF. And let me just put that in our little animation folder. Here we go. Save that right there. And then if I go to my files here, where are we? Here.
Your visual file system is pretty similar to mine.
Yeah, it's not the best, and to prove it, I can't find where the folder is gone. I might have to go to my desktop here. Apologies in advance for the entire gigantic mess of my desktop. Here we go. So that is now our little GIF, and when I it's ready to go. So this can get uploaded to an icon, it can get uploaded to a profile, and it will do this little animation. If I was saving it without the background, I would have that without the background behind it, without that kind of aqua green thing. So yeah, this basic, very, very short little animation that just keeps looping over and over and over again. This is like being very healthy for you, giving you 500 plus for eternity.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So before we close off, I just wanted to mention again this idea of what dithering is. So dithering is, I'm just going to make a new file. We're going to go with 64 by 64 pics. And RGB, yep, good. Do it. We can close our timeline now. We don't need it anymore. So dithering is this thing, again, like, the example that I always think about with this is like Afterburner. I don't know if like those of you guys who grew up with arcades probably remember Afterburner, that like F-14 game where you just like you fly your F-14 around. So this is what dithering looks like, and they do the ocean and the sky in this very like dithering sense, because what happens is if we're doing kind of like trying to do a gradient here, if we're doing something like this, it's going to look a little bit quite sort of Bambi and not great, right? So if that's our gradient of our kind of ocean, it's not the best in the world, not really going to work out for us. So what they do with dithering is, and I'll probably have to show my grid here, is they will go ahead and do something like this. So on the border, we're going to start with every 2 pixels will be shown. All right, so we're going to do something like this over and over, and then we're going to do it here as well. So we're going to get 2 rows of like skipping a pixel for the fill. And then we're going to do a row potentially, we might do more rows again here, but then we're going to do a row we're going to skip double pixels. So obviously we don't want this to happen, right? We don't want pixels to stack on top of each other because that's going to like destroy that illusion. So we want to skip one of the ones that would exist normally right here, and then we're going to do that one, and then skip, and then so on and so forth, right? And then we can potentially do that again right here. And what it's going to do, like I said, is it's going to give this illusion of a faded gradient. So again, when we zoom out of this, that edge looks a little bit blurry. It looks like a bit of a gradient, and we've got that smooth kind of transition, or as smooth as we can manage with hard edge squares, to happen in our pixel art. And that's what we call kind of dithering. So when you save it as a dithering, it might do some funny things to your file. So it's probably not the best thing to save a file as that kind of thing. But you can see, again, as I zoom out, that's making that transition a little bit smoother. So next time you play one of those retro games, look for this idea of dithering, because it is used quite a lot in kind of 8-bit retro games.
It's giving me like Pokemon vibes, like original Game Boy Pokemon vibes.
This is real, like, like Double Dragon or any of those kind of like super old games. This is like something that they would absolutely have been doing in those games to try and get that illusion of a gradient going.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. It kind of looks like one of those like horrible knitted Christmas sweaters, doesn't it?
It does a bit.
Yeah. Put some reindeers in there.
Andre is saying, if I'm not mistaken, all Sega Genesis games use this to create like water and Sonic games and create transparency and stuff like that.
Yeah. So again, one of those things is because it's got 8-bit and because it's lo-fi, we want to limit the amount of colors that the GPU has to generate. So the style is inherent to the capacity of that console.
Yeah.
So doing this essentially means that like what you would otherwise have to do is find a color that's in between these two, right? And generate a third color in between them. So that would need to be like this color. And so what's happening currently in this section here is we have generated the illusion of that color.
Yeah.
But with only these ones. So the computer doesn't have to render as many colors, but we still need to look like that one's just kind of in between those two. So we do it with dithering, and then it saves computing power, allowing us to do the other things that we need to do.
Pretty cool. That's awesome. Today's been great. I think we're at the end. Thank you everybody. Thank you everybody in chat. Check it out. Pretty cool. I might get this file from you with a transparent background and pop it in Discord, because we need some new icons as well. So that would be quite fun. We need to get this one and the one from last week, the static one from last week would be cool as well.
Yep.
We'll hook that up. So I guess that was a pretty sweet segue to our Discord. Jump in there if you want to hang out with us outside of our live streams. Johanna will share that in chat. It's been great hanging out with you guys. Jeremy, it's been great doing a live stream again with you. Always tons of fun.
Yeah, super fun, as always,
this is part 2 of a 2-part series. So if you're watching this and you want to catch some more, there'll be a link to the other one kind of on YouTube down in the notes down the bottom. It's heaps more Jeremy Lord content if you want to check out the sort of work that he will, traditionally does. Far more of his commercial work. I mean, we've done so many kind of walkthroughs. Even the Peppa Pig that we showed at the beginning was originally in Adobe Live. So that's all over on our channel on Adobe Live. And you also have your own channel as well, your own YouTube channel where you're starting to pop up content too.
I do, yeah. Shout out to that. So that is Jeremy Lord 5000, because Jeremy Lord was already taken.
It's over 5,000.
It is over 5,000, and that is so all of my tutorials and things live on here. Some of the live content is there as well, so you can catch it there as well. But yeah, so that will be going up. So I've got like tutorials that I do usually in Photoshop, but a few other programs as well. Some time lapses and just random stuff other than tips and tricks. So yeah, give us a shout, give us a comment, follow as well. Be super appreciated.
Nice. Definitely check that out. I'm sure there'll be a link. China will share a link down there in chat. And yeah, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. We'll be back next week. Jump over to the Discord, say hello. And Jeremy, once again, thanks for hanging out with us and teaching us all about animating pixel art.
Thank you, mate. And thanks everybody for the questions, and thanks for watching.
See you guys. Have a good day.
Take care.